All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast channel. I am Soul, joined by Macho, making his first appearance on one of these impromptu little videos. How you doing, man?
Man, hands just rubbing together, ready to get into this topic. It's the King of Kingdom Hearts and the Final Fantasy finale, and for this topic in general, really, it's what a week of news.
And I have to preface this video by saying that this is this isn't the place to do your little Final Fantasy 14 advertisements, man. That's the rule. That's the rule for
He's
these.
he's already prefacing it.
Yeah, that's the rule, man. That's the rule. We gotta abide by the
Well,
rules,
just in
man.
case you didn't know,
Nah, we get we going. Um, so guys, this is another one of these videos. Um, Sort of a piece of breaking news happens in the gaming industry that constitutes us jumping into a call and discussing said breaking news. Of course, the sort of topic that spurned this video is Assassin's Creed, the future of Assassin's Creed going live service. It is a thing that definitely pertains to the two of us, being fans of the franchise. Um, so yeah, we just got to talk about it, man. So this comes to
absolutely,
us.
100%.
Yeah, this comes to us by way of Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg, who dropped a story titled "Ubisoft plans Assassin's Creed live online game service." Quote, the future of Assassin's Creed is live service. Ubisoft Montreal and Quebec have teamed up for Assassin's Creed Infinity, a huge platform planned to have multiple settings. He continues, traditionally, Ubisoft's AAC teams in Montreal and Quebec would alternate projects, but now both teams are working on Infinity together, which is years away, but is planned as a live service platform. Details on Infinity are still in flux, as it won't be out until 2024 or later, but it may be some sort of hub that allows players to play multiple AC games, both big and small. Um, so with all and unquote. So with all of that being said, I think like sort of like the big like bulleted kind of like takeaways is that number one, we shouldn't expect this thing to come out until 2024, which is pretty nuts, right? Because we know the history of this franchise is either yearly or every other year. So the fact that we quite possibly won't see another Assassin's Creed game until 2024 is pretty nuts. I wish they would have done that with some of the earlier games, but that's neither here or there. Um,
I couldn't agree more. That's like they're talking about like pre-production stage. Like
yeah,
they probably haven't made like a pixel yet.
this game is like right now, like
Pretty
so
much, pretty
yeah.
much.
Um, so that's one of the bigger sorts of bullet points, and then as well as this idea of the game being a platform. I immediately what comes to mind and what he kind of touched on in his article is in the veins of like a GTA Online or a Fortnite. My mind also goes to like a Sea of Thieves or like a No Man's Sky. Possibly what Halo Infinite has kind of been talking about as well. Um, so yeah, I kind of want to get your thoughts on this, man. Like what, like you hear Assassin's Creed and you hear live service. What is going through your mind right now?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I'll preface this real quick too that I'm using a different mic, so if you hear me a little low, or the case may be, it's because I'm not using my traditional mic, so I apologize. But so I'm sorry if I'm screaming in your ear. So
No,
I
you're
just
good. You're
want to make
good.
sure that people hear me.
You're good.
Yeah, dude, this was like the surprise news I wasn't expecting this morning, and for someone that has been replaying the Assassin's Creed games, starting with two, and just kind of falling back in love with the series as a whole, I was already kind of in a dampened mood when I was playing. I'm coming off a Syndicate, and I really enjoyed that game, and I had a lot of fun with it. So to go from Syndicate to Assassin's Creed Origins, which again I was having kind of like I was having a little bit of conundrum. I was like, man, should I just really continue this series? I don't want to go into an open world RPG that's more or less like a Witcher 3 clone, but average, The settings are cool, but other than that, it's just kind of like, I don't know. And then I'm having these thoughts, right? And then all of a sudden, bam, I just get hit with this news. Assassin's Creed is going live service, and if you don't expect anything until 2024, which automatically makes me think, well, since they're doing DLC for Valhalla all of next year, they're probably going to milk it in all 2023 as well. And to me, it's just like I don't need to continue the Assassin's Creed series for me. Like even after Odyssey, I feel like if I just play Origins and Odyssey, I'd be kind of set with the series because it's going in a direction that I personally just don't want to really engage in. Really,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean that was sort of my feeling back in like 2014, right? Like that's kind of when I stopped playing the franchise, but this certainly doesn't make me want to come back. So like um and like I guess like this we talked about this earlier, but this is definitely like an interesting thing to kind of think about is that like the jump from Syndicate to Origins made sense back in the day, even though it was a change that I didn't like, and that's why I didn't play any of those three games. But the jump from Syndicate to Origins absolutely made sense because it came from a standpoint of, okay, Unity was botched. It was broken to pieces. People were looking like they had like acid poured onto their face and all their flesh got like peeled off. The game was moving at like a goddamn Microsoft PowerPoint for in terms of like frames per second. It was botched, and that had a sort of huge like consequential like effect on the next game being Syndicate, in terms of the fact that like sales for Syndicate were lower and it didn't meet the expectations that Ubisoft had. So they took a year off. They're like, okay, let's reevaluate the series. Let's change things up. Boom, here comes Origins, 2 years later. So that change made sense again, even though I didn't like it, it made sense. This now changing the franchise yet again, I'm a little bit like perplexed at this change versus the RPG one, because it's like the series is doing better than it's ever done before, right? Like Valhalla was, in terms of sales, I think like it was like right up there, or it beat Assassin's Creed 3 in terms of like the best selling game in the franchise. And the
right?
same thing with like Origins and Odyssey. Like these are games that consistently sell well year after year after year. So like it's clear that the market is really, really resonating with these games. So like I'm just kind of like, why it's almost that idea of like, if it's not broke, why fix it? Even though like there's a lot of things that I find broken with Assassin's Creed and I want them to fix. It clearly the market doesn't feel that way, right? So like I'm a little bit confused as to why drastically change the franchise yet again, when obviously your market is like responding really well to what you guys are doing.
Yeah, it's just at the same time, it feels like it's such a shame because people have been saying for years, right, that Assassin's Creed has lost its identity. Even you who wrote a piece on lordsofgaming.net that's just like Assassin's Creed is not what it used to be.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, it may never go back to actually being like that.
yeah.
And it is a shame because I feel like we're getting lost in the fold of like, at least Ubisoft is. The fans remember, but it feels like Ubisoft's forgetting what Assassin's Creed really means to people and
I
what it kind
remember.
of is. Yeah, like yeah, it's
I
just like
was
oh
there.
Ubisoft and yeah, it feels like Ubisoft is like they just don't know. But again, it's funny you bring up the market because they are going with the trends and they
Yeah,
keep shifting their weight to like what's popular based on based on the franchise where they already established what it was and what kind of game it is. And that's disappointing because they had something really solid with AC2, Brotherhood, Revelations into AC3, and then Syndicate, where it kind of reestablished itself as like this stealth action adventure, mini open world, but give you enough to do to kind of be satisfied with the regular formula of Assassin's Creed. And then they pivot over to open world RPGs, a trend that started to blow up, especially after The Witcher 3, how it got so popular. And then what are they doing right now in this day and age? What's super popular? Live service games.
Yeah.
So now they're jumping to that with a franchise that's already established and what it was like more than a decade ago.
Yeah.
So if it feels if I don't know, man, I got this really odd and weird feeling that I wouldn't have gotten a year ago when I wasn't super invested into the series or getting reinvested into the series. Now that I started replaying the games,
Yeah.
and now I kind of get this news, I'm just like, oh man, that's no bueno. I don't like it.
Yeah. And I guess like my biggest takeaway from all of this is that like because people are like fairly are saying like it's too early to judge. Like this is barely a game at this point, right? Like I'm not
Right,
gonna
right, correct.
slander this too much, but like more than anything, this solidifies to me that the any desire or any sort of hope or prayers that I once had for a return to the Assassin's Creed that I know and love of the Ezio trilogy and Edward and Altair and Connor. Those days are like definitively over. This news puts a nail in the coffin in terms of like any hope I ever had for AC returning to its roots. So more than anything, this definitely reaffirms that like, oh no, like Ubisoft is definitely committed to sort of having 60 to 80 hour experiences where there is boundless amounts of fluff, where there is microtransactions, where the games and it's very funny that this game is called Infinity because that's definitely what it's gonna feel like. You're gonna spend an infinite amount of time in this game. So that was kind of my,
Sadly,
yeah,
sadly.
that was kind of my like my biggest like realization is that like man like and like I packed it up long ago, man. I already accepted that like AC is just not gonna be for me anymore. I accepted that back in 2014. um and this definitely just kind of like reaffirms that, man.
And yeah, man, it's the thing is too is that I mean you cut off from the series pretty early on. I kind of just left it alone and came back to it with Origins and liked the experience, but I didn't really delve into Odyssey and Valhalla because it was just too much bloat. There's too much in there. So the idea of Ubisoft doing the same kind of game design, but for a longer period of time, just really puts me on edge because they really don't know how to
Rein it in.
sacrifice. Uh, yeah, yeah, exactly. They don't know how to rein it in. They don't know the balance between quality and quantity,
Yeah.
and they struggle with that ever since. Oh, man, I mean, I'll say probably like either Unity or even Black Flag, where they struggle with having quality stuff in their games and having enough of it rather than just too much of it, you know? And if anything, Odyssey and Valhalla are pure examples of having too much of one thing. And the fact that we're gonna have like a live service game that's gonna kind of embody that, it really, I don't really see it. Ubisoft hasn't proven to me that they can pull that off, let alone do it like a whole live service thing. It kind of baffles me, man. Like I'm genuinely sad about.
Yeah, and so like I think it's also important for us to talk about like what do you think this actually like means for Assassin's Creed? Like so Jason points out in his article that this is essentially going to be like some sort of like hub where there's essentially going to be like multiple Assassin's Creed settings within it, but then he also talks about like multiple like Assassin's Creed games, both big and small, within this platform. Like what do you think that means exactly? Like are we going to be seeing like actual like sort of like full-fledged Assassin's Creed experiences within this thing?
So here's the thing. I know you totally just told me not do Final Fantasy 4 and Final Fantasy 14 advertisement, but I'm gonna shout out Final Fantasy 14 here. Specifically because when they actually said it in the article, I my mind went straight to 14 with the expansions, where it has one Final Fantasy paradise, right, where you get to go and explore all the different kind of activities. But every 2 to 3 years, you have a big expansion drop, and that kind of like shifts the weight, and they all connect to each other, and they're expanding on gameplay, right? So that's the first thing I think of. I do not know how can you really do that for an Assassin's Creed game and make it like an ongoing service,
Yeah,
because one of the things that makes me not not bored of Syndicate, but something that was like one of my negatives about that game was that by the time I got to hour 20, I was ready to be done and out.
yeah,
I was ready for that story to end. So, and again, it's the same thing of like capturing this person, following that person. Here's your target. Here's this or that. There's only so much you can do of that and make that gameplay fun for like hundreds of hours on end. Something
exactly.
akin to like a Fortnite or Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah,
It's something that I don't have the vision for that, so I can't really see how that's gonna shift the tide. And I don't know if like those like expansion drops every 6 months or every year is really gonna be enough to make Assassin's Creed a live service worthy game.
yeah, yeah. I don't know because that's why it sort of worked for those early titles because they were only like 15, 10, 15, maybe 20 hours long. So that's why like you could kind of get away with, doing, those gameplay sort of missions that you were talking about. But yeah, if you're putting it now in sort of the kind of context of a live service where you're supposed to be doing these things, grinding and doing these things again and again and again and again, like ESO style or, FF14 or whatever, then yeah, that could, I just don't know, man. Um, that's
It
really,
like the worst case scenario is like what I'm thinking of is the last so the only open world AC game that I actually played was Origins, but I hear Odyssey still does this too, where you just go to different um what was it like different forts or whatever. You just go around basically that one little map and just take out everybody. I
yeah.
swear, if we get like 1,000 of those in like one expansion or something,
Oh my
it's
God.
just like I get it's the definition of cut and paste, which is what Assassin's Creed has been criticized against for years now,
Yeah. That's
and
that's
not really refining their tune. They just keep moving on.
yeah. I mean, that's a really good point, and I don't know, man. Like, there's another like thing, like aspect about this is that like why are they doing this? And so like I kind of think about like and you kind of brought this up to me earlier, is that like that someone made this comment on Twitter that like this really shouldn't be a surprise because this is sort of like where Assassin's Creed has been like heading towards, for the past like few years, right? With like Origins and Odyssey and Valhalla, that they have been technically live service games within themselves. and
Right. Yep.
and so like I think about like I think you asked me before that like sort of like can we ever imagine Assassin's Creed going back to the action adventure games and developing a standalone title like that alongside their sort of big Infinity platform. And my line of thinking with that is just like thinking about like Ratchet and Clank, for instance. Like for like first of all, my opinion is that like no, I don't ever envision Ubisoft going back to that formula because like thinking about Ratchet and Clank, for instance, like that's a title that like you put your $70 and you put out your $70 and that's it, right? The Sony isn't getting any more money from that game, but Ubisoft, they are chasing the very thing that Activision and EA and what all these other and Take Two are all chasing, is that they want you within this so-called platform, their ecosystem, for they want you to only play that title, right? So they want you to be spending money on the DLCs, the expansions, the goddamn unicorn skins for your horse, the microtransactions. They want you invested into that one single game for as long as possible, and that's something that you can't really get with a strictly single player traditional Assassin's Creed game. It's unfortunate, man, but that's sort of like why like I don't ever envision them like to me this is Assassin's Creed for the foreseeable future, man. I don't ever see them going back to the Assassin's Creed that we know and love because at that point, why would you?
Yeah, I want to be total pessimist on this either because the idea of it can't be where they do go back to stealth action adventure and they just drop like these 8 to 10 hour experiences in kind of like the sub world or this live service experience that they want to give, and it could be something really cool, but a lot of the a lot of the signs point downwards for me, where and it really comes from the open world RPGs that they've been doing for the past 5 or so years, where it was just big and bloated, and the combat was all over the place. It didn't
And
really feel
skating,
cohesive.
you were gliding around like you were on ice skates.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's like I don't even know. I can't even envision like how they want to work with that formula and put it into this, or if they're going with the old formula and doing with the live service. Like, there's so many questions to be had, and I just hope that they make the right decisions for what fans really want. But again, I can't really rely on them like that be anymore because they've been really going against what fans really want, or at least older fans what they really want, you
Yeah,
know. So, and
that's another
I
like
feel like I'm in that. I feel like I'm in that camp.
yeah. Finally, you understand my pain, man. Finally, welcome. um,
I do, yeah, I do. After replaying them, man, I'm just like, man, I would love to get like a more polished syndicate or a more tight knit, more varied quests, kind of like Assassin's Creed.
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah,
this doesn't seem like it.
yeah. Those days definitely aren't happening. But yeah, I mean, you bring up the fans, man, and it's just it's hilarious to me that like fans have been, I want to say since like Odyssey, because I think like the hardcore fans like they tolerated Origins, like they were like okay this is fine, but then Odyssey completely just went in a direction that like it just wasn't Assassin's Creed, and it rubbed a lot of like the hardcore fans the wrong way. Um, like
I can definitely see that. I can definitely see
yeah,
that.
and it's just funny to me that like after Odyssey and then after Valhalla, fans were clamoring like a return to form, a return to the AC that we all know and love. Ubisoft was just like, yeah, nah, man, we're going the complete opposite direction, man. That's just it's hilarious. Like, do I like?
Ubisoft, Ubisoft literally told us old fans, "You ain't shit."
I mean, but it makes sense, man. We're the unfortunately we're
I
the vocal
know.
minority. The market dictates how these things go, and the market right now is dictating that they want the Fortnites and they want the Destinies and et cetera, et cetera. Um, so it man.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. It's again, it's kind of again, it's more of a shock and surprise to me, just because like after playing Syndicate, I was really hoping that maybe the next Assassin's Creed game, wherever it's gonna be set in, whatever the protagonist was gonna be, it will be like a really good mix of what they've been trying for something new and the old. But this is just going in a direction. It's like, whoa, this is like completely out of left field. I think people were kind of expecting it more or less, but I don't think people were expecting it to be this soon.
No,
Especially after
I
success of Valhalla.
I definitely was not expecting expecting a live service AC game. That if you were
Yeah,
to
this quickly, right?
or just in like regardless, if you were to tell me 10 years ago the franchise that pioneered characters like Ezio fucking Auditore, right? like an assassin who stalks the rooftops and waits for his prey before jumping in for the kill, or a character like Altair Ibn Ahad or Edward Kenway, and that one day that this franchise would move to a point where it's like, okay, you and a group of friends are going to be doing the floss dance while you're running around let's
No,
say ancient
no,
Greece,
please,
running around
no.
ancient Greece, and you have to kill, I don't know, like Julius Caesar or something like that. Like I would have said, you are batshit insane, man. There's no way in hell that's happening. But that's hey, my nightmares are becoming reality, man. It looks like that might happen. Um,
Oh no! First it was Kratos doing the floss, and now we're gonna get Ezio. You hate to
Oh
see
man,
it.
so that actually brings up another like interesting point. Like, what do you think the gameplay is actually going to be like for this? Like, is this like what are you thinking? Like, is this truly going to be something that we are kind of grouping together with friends and just like doing assassination missions together, or like what does this thing look like to you?
I mean, the best case scenario in my head would be kind of like that Final Fantasy 14 route. I keep advertising this game. That's the best example where it's like you have like a single player narrative that you can just completely engage in by yourself, but albeit you would have to go to dungeons with players in multiplayer,
Yeah,
obviously, because it's MMO. So I can envision it like that where you have like this narrative in a certain set piece in time, and you're either playing as a your own creative assassin or maybe a story character, and then you just take them through that story, but you have dipped in co-op missions every now and then. That to me, that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that it plays exactly like Origins and Valhalla, and you literally just have this huge open world, and you just go to whatever, and then you see other players running around, just killing guards, and, and interacting with like minions
oh
and
my
thunder
god,
gods. Like
oh
I want,
no.
like that's the worst case scenario in my head. But I'm interested to see what you think this could probably go into, either serious or whatever the case.
I mean, um Walt just brings up in the chat, like Unity multiplayer, and like my like I played that co-op stuff like extensively, man, back in the day, and like it just never worked because like yeah, I'm surrounded by my dumbass friends trying to coordinate like a stealth mission, right? Being in this sort of like open-ended like little playground where we each have to like move around sneakily, not alert the guards or whatever, and it just always devolves into like a big battle, right? So like the idea of Assassin's Creed, Destiny, or MMO style, game just like fundamentally in my head just doesn't make sense because like how do you how do you coordinate that? How do you make a game where you're running around with multiple people and trying to like stealthily infiltrate, a palace or whatever? Like it's just always going to end this in the same way no matter what you do, and it's always going to devolve into fights breaking out. So like I just don't envision a future where this logically makes sense in my head. um that could be.
Or Soul. We could be like in those commercials that they love to shoot, where we're super excited. We have the controller in front of our faces. We're like, I'm going left, you're going right.
Oh
Get him.
man.
There's a card right there.
And
He's red. Go
they're
get
gonna
him.
do they're gonna do that, man. They pioneered that bullshit. We're that. Oh man, that's a dark future, man. I can definitely see it coming, man. Um,
Again, it's like I swear the reveal for this is going to be taken in probably the worst way possible. Um, I swear, if like the head of that studio or the head of that project comes out in assassin's robes, like Infinity, Assassin's Creed, I am just going to turn off my computer and be like, Ubisoft, we're done. We're
yeah,
done. After the Avatar game, that's it. That's it. We're done, Ubisoft.
yeah, yeah. It's certainly something, man. And I guess like This was a question that you asked, in one of our previous streams that we won't get into too too deep. We won't detail too much. But like, if this switch could possibly like, I guess deter like developers, right? That was your question, sort of along those lines.
Yeah, yeah, more or less that like because it keeps shifting.
Yeah,
So the so the people that kind of grew up with Assassin's Creed and we hear this all the time, especially even with like the Ratchet and Clank games, where like people are saying, I grew up with these games. Now I get to work on them. That's
yeah.
a dream come true." You're probably not getting a developer from Ubisoft to say that, like at all, because they're like, "I grew up with stealth action adventure. I got a job at Ubisoft. Yeah, we're making Valhalla. It's gonna be one of the most dense open worlds ever, even though we said that it wasn't gonna be." And then next thing we're gonna do is a live service game. Like, honestly, that would piss me off because I'm like, no, like
Yeah,
our creative juices flow better when we have a nice condensed project, and our past games prove to that.
yeah.
I
So
understand wanting to kind of go with the market and wanting to kind of evolve, but there is a thing such as stepping too far in one direction.
yeah, definitely. And like, I guess to wrap this thing up, to that point, like we just had sort of a legend in the Assassin's Creed hardcore community, Darby McDevitt, leave Ubisoft, and I kind of have to think to myself like if this had any sort of anything to do with that. He was the guy
Mm-hmm.
who spearheaded like the writing for Revelations, Black Flag, Embers, and Valhalla. Like he was really the one who kind of like shepherd or like really sort of wanted more assassin iconography and deep lore in Valhalla because that was missing in the previous two games. So he was the one who really kind of brought that back. And I'm curious if the idea of a live service AC kind of turned him off, and that's what made him want to leave. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so eye-opening. I didn't even know that until you brought it up, to be honest. Like I wasn't aware of like kind of like that shift in decision making and just the ties. And now you brought it up, it makes so much more sense.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, man, I guess that pretty much does it for us. I mean, closing thoughts, man. I'll jump in really quick and just say that, like, yeah, this is the nail in the coffin for me in terms of just like any hope that I might have had for AC ever returning, to its roots is dead and gone, right? That Justin Timberlake and Ti song, man, is dead and gone. It's never coming back, man. Which makes me sad, man. The like man, I loved this franchise, man. Like absolutely adored it. Like I have a goddamn like 200-page art book of like the OG games in my bookshelf. I had um every game from AC1 to AC4 bought on day one. Like I was into the lore, man. Like I loved this franchise, and just to see it going to like a platform live service game, man, where sort of like you build the foundation in year one and it's like really bare bones, and it's not until like year three where this thing actually starts to resemble the game that you promised initially. Like that being the road that Assassin's Creed is being led towards, it's just like really sad, man. Yeah, that's kind of my overall thoughts. What about you?
Uh, I will I will basically just something from the great Ezio Auditore de Firenze. Requiescat in pace.
Yeah. So yeah, let's
That's
let's
yeah, that's kind of my take on that. And oh yeah, one again another great quote. Um, I am weary of this fight, not because I'm tired, but because the struggle seems to move in one direction only, Ubisoft, towards chaos.
yeah,
Do
yeah,
the right thing, bro. Do the
yeah.
right thing.
So we're gonna call it here, man. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel, man. We would greatly appreciate that. Definitely. We do a podcast every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. where we talk about the latest and greatest in the gaming community. Be sure to check us out, man. We would greatly appreciate it. So yeah, man. See you guys in the next video. Peace.